Hey everybody, Jessica Morrison here, Realtor with Ferris Property Group. I am super excited to be back. Today we are doing another top agent interview with Noelle Nielsen with the Bright Birch Group out of the Twin Cities with eXp Real Estate. Noelle, before I screw this introduction up anymore, please tell us about who you are and the eXp market in Minnesota.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Jessica. So I do have a little bit of a tongue twister name, Noelle Nielsen, and I actually married into that name, which is funny. But I am with eXp Realty, and yes, the market here has been just crazy. We do have the same thing that we are starting to see around the country, which is low inventory.
Mhm.
And so it's been a very interesting couple of years, and the inventory just still has not picked up here. We need more sellers, honestly. We have a lot of buyers looking for properties, and we don't have a lot of sellers wanting to sell properties. So it's been kind of a crazy year. And 2020, despite it being the year of COVID, really actually caused us to also go into further low inventory because everybody was home working on projects in their house, working on backyard projects, getting their homes ready to sell, and wanting to either have more space to work from home, changing what they were looking for with what they wanted in their house. And so I honestly think we saw a huge uptick in real estate sales this last year.
Yes. So we're kind of run me through the stats really quick on your local market. Like, where are you guys at in terms of months of inventory? What's your average sales price running? So I'm curious where Minnesota is in comparison to Indiana.
Yeah, so the last time that I looked, we were at about, depending on what market you're looking at in Minnesota, because we have the Twin Cities, which is tight, and then we've got a lot of rural space in Minnesota. But depending on if you're in the Twin Cities, it's usually under a 30-day inventory. Some little pockets are actually much tighter than that, which means a house is going to sell on average within that length of time. So it's been really crazy. It's a little less crazy in outstate Minnesota in the more rural zones. But still, you're still seeing land going quickly. You're seeing farm properties go quickly too. So it just depends on what exactly you're looking for. And if you're looking for a deal as a buyer, now probably isn't the best time to be looking because you may not be able to find that deal.
Or if you do find it, you need to be prepared to act quickly because it's maybe less about the
Absolutely.
deal and more about the bigger picture with your finances. So for those who
Absolutely.
are not familiar with who you are, let's just kind of do an introduction on your story. How did you get into real estate?
Sure. Yep. I have a very unusual background. And many people that follow me on social media are aware of my background. But for those that don't know, I have a very interesting background. I actually am a recovering attorney, if you will. I'm still licensed, but I don't practice law anymore. But I did practice real estate law for a few years and simultaneously opened a photography business. And I opened that business because I just needed a creative outlet during law school and started photographing my friends, started photographing their engagements, which then turned into their weddings. And so as I graduated from law school and I had a great job at a great law firm, I also was still not able to like get rid of this creative side that I had. And I ultimately had to come to this decision of, do I run my own business or do I keep practicing law? And so I took a crazy leap. I went full time into my photography business. It was massively successful. I did that for about 7 years. And as I was doing that, I came to this point where I realized I just felt like there needed to be more for me, and I knew that I wasn't going to have the physical energy to photograph weddings for the rest of my life. It's a very physical job, and so I still had an interest in real estate from both because I practiced real estate law and just it was a natural interest of mine. So I went and got my real estate license and slowly merged my business over to the real estate platform platform. And honestly, I was very fortunate that many of my clients actually moved right with me, and they transitioned from being photography clients into real estate clients. And I was able to use my creative background then to start my business, and to really, it started with just photographing the homes and doing their marketing a little different, using my social media base that I had built with photography to sell the real estate. And that also transitioned into starting to use my camera equipment instead of taking photos to take video. And I saw quickly at the beginning of my career that video really was for me going to be the way that I could sell real estate faster than the other realtors that were around me. But I didn't want to be on video myself. I was really uncomfortable with that. I was used to being on the other side of the camera, which I literally always have my camera right by me. And I was used to being on this end. It's super uncomfortable for people to be on this end of the camera. And so instead, I took my child. I actually have his business card right here. I took my child, Winston James, and I titled him as Realtor Boy. And I did my first produced video of a luxury home that I had gotten the listing for. And I took him around the house and I let him just kind of describe the house in his own 4-year-old descriptions, what he saw in this house. And I filmed it from a child's perspective. And the video and he took off. And it became really the beginning of video for me with real estate. And after that, it took off so much that I started growing a team. I quickly grew my team. My team then needed to go off on their own. We left where we were at. I started my own brokerage, and that doubled. And we started the brokerage with a social media presence and with encouraging agents to use social media and do marketing. And my business took off. Like the people in my sphere easily recognized that I was the local realtor in their mind, because I was putting myself out there as a realtor. And I think a lot of the people in real estate that we know are what you call a secret agent. They're afraid to talk to their friends about it. They're afraid to put it out on social media. They don't want to pester. And I was the same way. And that's why I wanted to do it in an entertaining way, where maybe if they weren't looking to sell, they still wanted to watch the video because it was entertaining. And so from there, that's where Bright Birch came from. And we really haven't looked back. We now have a very large group of agents with us at EXP. I switched over to EXP so that agents around the country, we could team up and teach people how to do social media for selling real estate. And I, to this day, still do a lot of social media with my sellers when it does come time to list their home.
I love it. And I think that's such a beautiful evolution. And as an artist myself, I went to school for illustration. So when I first got familiar with your name and your story, I was like, oh my gosh. And then I know a little bit of your personal background with now being on a farm. And I grew up like with horses and stuff. So I'm just like, girl, you are like my soul sister in another state.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the farm. So this last year, my husband, who still is a practicing attorney in the Twin Cities, and we decided that when COVID hit, we realized that so much of what we can do is done virtually. And as we were in the middle of that realization, a small little hobby farm came available back in my hometown. I'm a small town girl. Someday, it was always a someday plan that we might end up moving back home. And our someday plan quickly evolved into a right now plan. And we were perfectly situated with everything being so virtual to be able to make that transition. And honestly, I couldn't have done it without the fact that I had already built this team in the Twin Cities that can still help with all of our listings, and they can still help with our buyers. And it's just been amazing to watch it happen and to be in that moment where we could capitalize on taking the risk and going for it. And I like to encourage everybody that happens to come into my life of like, hey, if you have a dream, don't wait your whole life to step into that dream. figure out how to go for that dream right away. And it's the same thing with people that are looking to buy or sell. I think a lot of people hold off on making these big, scary decisions because it's going to be a big change in their life.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people overthink big changes. They spend a lot of time just thinking about change, being afraid of change. And obviously, with the description of my career and where I went and what I've done, from going to a lawyer to now I'm basically a goat farmer that sells real estate. And I lost that feeling of being so afraid of change. And now I welcome the change because almost every single change that we've gone for,
Mhm.
it has paid off in the end. It may initially be uncomfortable. You may initially feel like you're floundering, but if you surround yourself with great support and you leverage systems and you leverage technology and you leverage what's in front of you, usually change can be a lot easier instead of what people are so afraid of with, taking that leap.
Oh, for sure. I think that it's so critical too for agents, like to build a business that allows you to step out. Like, I think like I'm at that point in my career where my manager and my coach both want me to like work towards having an assistant or showing assistant this year, which is super exciting, but it's that wrestling of, but what about like the relationship that I build? And, it's like you're not critical to opening a door. So, and like there's certainly ways that you can still develop that relationship with the client, but still leverage your time to where you are ultimately building a business rather than a glorified job, because a business can run itself, whereas a job can't be done without you. So I just love that you've been able to achieve that with your career, because it's inspirational for me, and I know for so many other people. And congratulations on that. Like
Thank you.
what a pleasant surprise, I bet.
Well, I know a lot of people look at me like, oh, what is that girl doing now? And initially, I had a lot of self doubt around that. Like, what are people going to think about me? And then I've come to realize that it doesn't really matter. Does it
Mhm.
really matter what people think about you? As long as you're being kind and you're authentic and you're genuine and you have a spirit of helping people, why do we care so much about what the people around us think about us? I there was a meme that was posted not that long ago that was about how people that usually drive the fancy cars and they buy the big fancy houses to post online for a group of people that they aren't even friends with. And it's like, how true is that? I mean, how true is it? Why aren't we more focused on making decisions for ourselves, making decisions for our families, making decisions that will ultimately make us a happier person, and then in return we can be that happy person for the people around us and are way more effective that way. And so I just really have had a big mindset shift in the last 4 years with all of the really crazy changes that I've made that people are just sitting there like, what is she doing now? Um, yeah, it's fun. It's
Yeah.
fun to keep people on their toes. Honestly, I now enjoy it.
Well, and that's great because people like it's not predictable. And I think that again is a great example of how, even like just from a business perspective, like we need to constantly be doing something different and being willing to take risks. And that looks different in so many different ways. But, um, it certainly keeps your engagement level up on social media, but it's not about that. Like I keep probably referring
It
to that,
honestly,
but
yeah, for me, it really hasn't been about the amount of followers or the amount of likes or the amount of engagement. And
right.
and I think for anybody that's listening to this that participates on social media, whether you're buying or selling real estate or you're a realtor or you're just not and you're just watching this for some reason, if you're on social media, I encourage people to think about why am I using it and what am I getting out of it. And for me, it is really about the authenticity and just encouraging people to think differently, to step out of their comfort zone. And I think through that,
Mhm.
I have picked up a following just by being who I am. And there's a big release in that because you're not pretending to be someone through a filter. You're just being who you are. And then there's no surprises, really. I still surprise people because they can expect the unexpected with me, but at the same time, they've come to know, hey, we just don't know what she's going to do next. Like, it's just who I am.
That's great. It's great. Well, this is a perfect segue into my next question about why people should work with you, Noelle, when it comes to the Twin Cities, because I think we've already established that you're very creative, you think differently, you're not afraid to take risks. And so when you're sitting down with a seller, what would you want them to know if they are interviewing other agents?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I think works out so well for me personally with selling real estate is the fact that I do have that marketing background and I also have the legal background. And so, when it comes time to actually sell the house, we're going to market it better. We're going to really shine the best light on what they have to offer for their sale. And then we're going to out negotiate. So we're going to try to get them as a seller top dollar for their home, get them all the way through inspection, all the way to closing. I think a lot of people are like, yep, I can go with this online, seller. We're going to just list it. They'll market it for me. I'll pay a cheap fee and it'll be done. And so many times a deal can fall through after the inspection. A deal can still fall through if all of the T's have not been crossed and all the I's have not been dotted. And so I have both that thorough side in my brain and we have that marketing side. And really, as I've grown my group, and I'll encourage you as you're talking about growing your group, I've been really careful with who I partner with on my team because it has to be somebody that also reflects who you are as the leader. When you're sending them into their home and you're using your team to help you get your client to that closing date, your team really has to reflect who you are as a leader. And so I'm very fortunate that I've got an amazing team with me in the Twin Cities, but we also have teammates all around the state in Minnesota. So really, if they're looking to sell in Minnesota, I probably have an agent that I can refer them to. And we've just been really blessed with surrounding ourselves with unicorns, like the people in real estate that are doing it differently, just like me. Your vibe attracts your tribe, and that's really who we have with us in my group here at EXP.
That's awesome. And I completely agree. And I'm just excited for you in that as well, because I think when you work on developing a business from nothing, it's truly like another, I don't have kids yet, but I have pets and I know they're not the same, but just imagining that, your business is like a child or it's like a pet, you love it dearly and it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. And so when you invite someone to help come be a part of that brand, it's super critical that, that's not, they're adding to it instead of taking away from it. So I'm excited that you've been able to attract the right people because I know that
Yeah.
it's going to just continue to obviously grow as you've demonstrated. You've been doubling year over year, which is awesome. So what do you
Yeah.
see
Yep.
things shaping up for 2021 in the Minnesota market?
I think it's going to be probably more of the same, unfortunately. I just don't see enough inventory coming on yet. And I don't think there's any way we can catch up with a flood of inventory is what we would need, an absolute flood of inventory. And I just don't necessarily see that happening. I think in these times that we're in right now, where there's just so much uncertainty, people don't like the uncertain. And so, like we've been talking about this whole conversation with change and uncertainty, the natural human reaction to that is to hunker down, to stay, to wait it out. Don't put your foot in the water. Don't feel if it's ready yet. You just wait. And that also is really Minnesotan. It is unusual for Minnesotan to do the changes that I have. We're very traditionally Scandinavian up here. You may hear it in my accent, and I'm now in northern Minnesota, which is where I belong because my accent, it blends in more. Although I still even have a very thick Minnesotan accent for where I am. But it is just a very normal for us in Minnesota to be adverse to jumping into the change, because it's just, we need to wait. We need to see. We need to make sure. Is it time yet? Do we know what direction it's heading? In general, here in Minnesota, we've got several big corporations. They are also saying, like Target. Most people are familiar with Target. Target is headquartered here in Minnesota, or Best Buy. They're all saying, well, we're not going to go back to work yet, at least until June of 2021, maybe even longer. People are okay with it. They're going to stay in their homes. They're not going to go into their offices. If you live in the Twin Cities and you've been driving during traffic hour, you will have noticed traffic is amazing. It's easy to get through the Twin Cities, which is unusual. Normally at like 7 in the morning, but nobody's been going to work. All the companies are keeping their people home. And I think as long as we continue to see that, we're going to see a lot of people just waiting to sell. They're waiting. Now, the people that really want to buy something, they're still going to try to find that house to buy. Last year, I had almost every single listing I had went into multiple offers. And by multiple, we are still seeing 30 plus offers on a well-priced home, which then drives the offer up. We're seeing offers go anywhere up to $40,000 over asking, which creates a whole new wave of problems. And that's where it's really important to have a realtor helping you, because if you don't have the right advice, you may find yourself in a place where if you didn't take the right offer, you didn't do thorough investigation, you might see that house under appraise. An under appraisal creates a huge issue with how do you move out of that. You've got a seller that now anticipated X amount of dollars in their bank account at closing, and now they're finding out they're only going to get Y unless the realtor, one, did a thorough job investigating how much cash that buyer came to the table with, what type of financing they were able to get. It's just a whole new ball game when it's such low inventory. And so I think we're going to see more of that this year still. I don't think we're going to see any changes unless interest rates change. Interest rates right now are still very low. I had a buyer last week that just locked in at 2.5% on a conventional loan, which is crazy. I mean, that's a record low. We're still at record lows with interest rate. If those start going up, we may not have as many buyers also. So just things to think about. No one can predict. If I could predict it, I probably wouldn't be sitting on this interview. I'd probably be sitting somewhere else, getting paid a whole lot more.
Well, at the time of recording this interview, GameStop is doing its thing over on the stock market. I mean, if you could predict things, you could make a whole lot of money.
Oh, yeah. I mean, really, stock has been a big topic for us, even where I'm at EXP. We have stock at our brokerage. And in the last week, we watched our stock go from in the $90 range up to $120 at one point. And then it's like riding a roller coaster with it. And, I think as we watch the stock market, we are going to start seeing some of that change with the interest rates, just because it's going to be an interesting time in 2021. I think it will be.
I think there's a burning question that I've seen come across headlines of, will there be a big foreclosure crisis in 2021? What's your thought on that?
I think it's possible. However, I do believe that this round, it's going to be a lot different. So when I did real estate law, that's actually what I helped work on, was in the foreclosure industry, working with title companies, working with banks, working with lenders. And back then it was they were ill prepared for something like that to happen. This time around, it's going to be a lot different. I don't think we're going to see, if it does happen, a huge flow of those properties hitting the average market. I don't think it's going to be as easy to find those foreclosures as a buyer. I think they're going to go through different avenues. We might see the banks actually holding the properties this time and turning them into investment properties, because in the country, there's also a very tight market for rentals, right? So it's hard for renters. Rent is getting driven way up in so many of the big markets.
Yep.
And so I just think we are going to see it eventually, but we're going to see it in a way that we haven't seen it before. And so I can't really predict how that's going to affect us in real estate. I think we're going to see a lot different type of foreclosures and wholesaling than we saw the first time around.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I love that insight from your previous background, because I've always said too, like, foreclosures are super lean in our market. And if they do come up, you're usually competing against cash investors because they're looking for the deal. So
Mhm.
I always tell people, we can certainly try to find you a foreclosure because it's
Yeah.
associated with getting a deal, whether or not that's going to be in your best interest with, do you have time to make renovations? Is that something that really fits into your lifestyle? But, just setting those expectations early that these are the people who are trying to find deals for a living as investment properties, and you just need to be prepared to come up against a cash offer. But yeah, great insight.
Well, and the thing we have different this time too is the large amount of iBuyers, like people that are companies that are buying properties, sometimes sight unseen, or they have a system. So we've seen Zillow do this recently in many of the markets where they come in as a buyer for these sellers that don't want to deal with going to market. They don't want to deal with working with the little guy. They don't want to deal with working with the little investor. And so that is also going to change, I think, some of that foreclosure industry, because we may not see some of those properties. They may have already gone through, and Zillow is just one of hundreds of options of iBuyers. Even at my brokerage now, we have an iBuyer program where you have 12 different buyers that you could bring in if you find a seller that maybe doesn't want to hit the market. And I think a lot of brokerages are switching to that in order to compete with the Zillows that are out there. And so it is going to impact for a buyer to find that foreclosure deal. It just is. There is not, I don't think we're ever going to see what we saw back in 2008, 2009. We're not going to see it that same way ever again.
Yeah, which honestly is a good thing. Like, I think for the buyers, and a lot of times it tends to be first-time home buyers who are hoping to come back and get a deal and maybe play catch up on the time because they're having to be renting and for whatever reason. And I think it's just always good to remember that we know like foreclosures mean people are losing their homes. And
Mm-hmm.
I like that's a devastating thing to go through. And that's going to push that person probably into a very expensive rental situation because their credit's going to be challenging. I mean, my heart just goes out to people who are in that possible situation. And for sellers maybe who are in that position, what is your typical advice?
I'd say don't wait so long. Don't let your pride get in the way of maybe saving you from a dangerous situation financially for you and your family. Reach out to your bank. If you feel like you're going to be missing payments, reach out, because a lot of these lenders actually have programs that they can put you through to help you before it is too late. Especially during this time, there's been a lot of them that have developed some programs. So I would say don't wait. Don't wait to reach out to your lender and find out if there's a way to get some help and to get some relief before it is too late. And also, it doesn't hurt to reach out to a real estate agent. Bring somebody in that's qualified that can give you a market analysis on your home. Almost all realtors will give you that complimentary market analysis because, of course, they want to get in and get a chance to list your home. But when the inventory is so low, if that is your option, if your option is I'm going to go into foreclosure or a short sale, or I can sell my house and still make maybe top dollar, or with the inventory being so low, right now is the time to sell one of those houses that maybe it needs some upgrades, maybe it needs new appliances, maybe it needs paint, maybe it has some cosmetic issues or structural issues, and it might be a way hard house to sell. And instead of fearing the change and fearing that you're not going to be able to sell it, or fearing what an agent might think if they walk into your cluttered home, instead trust the professional. Let them come in, let them give you their opinion. Get a couple of opinions, have a few agents walk in, do an interview with agents, and see what they say. See if they can give you a thorough analysis of what's happening in your neighborhood, in your location, and weigh all of your options before letting your pride push you into a place of extreme discomfort and honestly a financially risky spot. There are options, but when inventory is this low as it currently is, there should be no reason why somebody lets themselves go into foreclosure. They should probably take that hit to their pride and sell their home and make that cash back.
Well, and I think it's much easier to choose to make the decision on your own rather than waiting for something to happen to you. And I think it's very easy for you and I to talk about this and to be like, well, yeah, like you should do that. But we're not the one trying to figure out like where we're going to put our kids, and like change
Absolutely.
as you said
Yeah.
earlier is very challenging, especially with that. And I would just encourage anyone watching who might be in a challenging situation to not be afraid to have these conversations, because it's free. To talk with a realtor, to talk with your bank, unless they charge for some reason for that consult. But, like we are more than happy. A lot of us got into this industry from another profession. A huge portion of our industry is made up of teachers or former nurses. So we're a very caring group of people who want to serve you, or at least for most, I think that's the case.
It should be, right?
Yeah.
If your agent does not seem like they're a very caring person, then they're probably not the right agent for you. There's your first sign.
Well, Noelle, we only have a few minutes left. What would you like to leave our audience with in terms of maybe advice or tips, or you've got the floor?
I would say, really, when we've been, over the last several years, inundated with HGTV, house flipping, house projects, all of these things, Pinterest, I see people get way overwhelmed with the concept of selling their home. It actually, maybe if somebody did a study, it could be part of why we're seeing low inventory, because people think that they have to do all these DIY projects on their home before they can list it, and it has to be perfect. And I would just say, nope. Have a realtor come in before you spend a single dollar on your house. If you're a realtor and you think that you need to spend all this money on your own house, maybe you should have a fellow realtor friend come into your house and give you their perspective before you start spending all of this money in your home to list it. Because when inventory is so low, you can get a lot more equity out of your home without even putting another dollar into it. And so that would be my huge takeaway. And if you're an agent right now and you're struggling and you're looking to get started in the business with inventory being so low, my advice would be know your market, get out there, preview the small inventory that is left, try to work with another agent, even if they're not at your own brokerage. You can find agents that want partnership, that would love to have you feature their home on social media just to get your feet wet and get going in the industry. If you want to pursue this career in real estate, it isn't the easiest time to be a realtor because of the inventory being so low, but you can still do it. There's ways around it. Get innovative with what you're doing. And yeah, I hope that we have another really exciting year in real estate here in 2021. And I really appreciate this interview, Jessica. It's been a pleasure speaking with you about real estate today.
Yeah, well, I think, again, you're in the Twin Cities and the general Minnesota area. So anybody who's considering making a move or relocating, obviously connect with Noelle, and I'll put your contact information in the post or comment
I'm
box.
easy to find. I'm Noelle the Minnesotan on every platform. You can find me very easily because I love Minnesota, so I'm an easy target. Uh,
Wonderful. Well, Noelle, thank you so much for your time today, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
you too. Thank you.